All right, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to your remote laws and rights class. I know it's not what anybody wanted, and it's not ideal, and I definitely would rather be there with you guys, seeing you face to face. But this is what we have to deal with, and it's going to be challenging, but I feel confident we can handle it. I'm going to try several different things, and just know that I'll be flexible, and if something isn't working, we can definitely revise it. So I'm going to do some lectures like this where I'll have a recording and I'll have a PowerPoint for you guys. And then I'm going to try to do some live streams from time to time through YouTube where you guys, if you are able, can stream in and ask questions live. And then whoever isn't able can go back and look at a recording or watch the recording. I have two dogs that you'll be seeing, and I'll introduce you to properly later. They're eating supper. But one is Hattie B, and she's really loud, and she barks at everything. And I have no idea how I'm supposed to keep her from barking while I'm teaching, which probably means I won't be keeping her from barking. And then I have another one, Pit Bull, that's sweet as well, but way more quiet. So we'll see how it goes. But so we need to pick up on part 91. I'll talk more details later about class expectations and what we're going to do. And I know I need to review your paper outlines and we'll work on those soon, but I want to get started on wrap up part 91. So let's see. Next slide, sorry. Okay, this is where I think we stopped. We had stopped, we have not done this one. So go to 91.125. What time is it? You guys have to tell me what time it is. That's not going to work. Do I have it on here? Okay. We stopped at minimum safe altitudes, I think, before spring break, which was 91.119. Make sure that's highlighted. I think we also did 91.121. The altimeter settings. Remember when you're below 18,000 feet. I'm on 91.121A1. You have to check the current altimeter setting and then adjust it in your aircraft before you take off. You got to do that at least within 100 miles. But then once you're at or above flight level 180, we set it to standard. And what is standard? 2992. 91.123 talks about compliance with ATC clearances and instructions. And all I wanted you guys to see from there pretty much is that it's mandatory to comply with ATC. And then if you look at paragraph Charlie under 91.123, it says each pilot in command who, in an emergency or in response to a traffic alert and collision avoidance system resolution advisory, deviates from an ATC clearance or instruction shall notify ATC as soon as possible. So remember I taught you about TCAS. There's a difference between a traffic advisory and a resolution advisory. The word resolve means to fix. So if we're flying and we get an RA on our system, which would be red, and it would start yelling, it might say like, pull up, pull up. That's a resolution advisory. We got to follow those immediately so that we don't have a mid-air collision, right? So that was what they were talking about there. Now, the ATC light signals, that's what's up on the PowerPoint. This is really primitive. I don't know anyone that has this table memorized right here, but if you needed it in the real world, you would pull it up on your iPad. You would just need to remember it's in part 91. This is if we lose communications and you have visual with the tower. ATC has like this big like telescope light gun that they will shoot different colors to let us know what our next steps would be. It varies whether you're on the surface or in the air. So for example, well, which colors are least favorite color in aviation? Red. So if you see something about red, it probably means something about don't do it or stop, right? And if you see something about green, it probably means come on in. So if you look at steady green and you're on the ground, it means you're cleared for takeoff. Where if it's steady green and you're in flight, it means you're cleared to land. Where if you look at steady red and you're on the ground, it means stop. And if you're in the air, it means give way to another aircraft. So again, these are primitive, but I just wanted you guys to know they're there. Okay, TFRs. Turn the page and go to 91.137. So I want you guys doing this with me just like you would be in class, right? Like open up your books, put your phones away. Are you off your phone in the back? You got this. Go to 91.137, highlight TFRs. TFR stands for Temporary Flight Restrictions, and the main thing I wanted you to know about this, guys, is that TFRs are found in NOTAMs. And now I want to talk about what a NOTAM is. Notice to Airmen. I want us to go to our aim. So go to the very, very back of the index. I want you to tell me what page it's on. NOTAMs. All right, what you got? I see it's on page 766. Let's go there. Y'all want to see my little pit here? Oh, hold on, Diamond. Stay still. With our aerospace shirt on for you. Say hi, my name's Diamond. Good girl. 766, guys. Let's go to chapter 5-1-3, page 766, right-hand column. And I want you to highlight paragraph A and note 1. So what is a NOTAM? Notice to Airmen. I hope we haven't covered this. I don't feel like we have. So notice to Airmen, it says it's time-critical aeronautical information, which is of either a temporary nature or not sufficiently known in advance to permit publication on aeronautical charts or in other operational publications, receives immediate dissemination via the National NOTAM system. NOTAMs we have to check before departure, guys, because it could give us information that would actually not allow us to safely take off or fly to and land at an airport. So how we check weather and performance and our pre-flight and everything, NOTAM is part of that. The note 1 says NOTAM information is that aeronautical information that could affect a pilot's decision to make a flight. It includes such information as airport or aerodrome primary runway closures, taxiways, ramps, obstructions, communications, airspace, blah, blah, blah. Now, I want you to know the difference between, there's several types of NOTAMs. There's a DNOTAM, an FDC, a pointer NOTAM, an SAA NOTAM, which is special activity airspace, and a military NOTAM. I was told in my other senior class that you're, during your check rides, they'll ask you what are all the various types of NOTAMs. So I want you to know all those, but for me, I want you to know a DNOTAM and an FDC NOTAM. Oops. Oh, sorry, guys. So looking at DNOTAMs, D stands for distant. D stands for distant. Look under paragraph Bravo 1 and go kind of towards the very bottom where it says NOTAM D information. Can you see that? No. Let me scoop. Nope. Not happening. There. Boom. Kind of go right down here. It says NOTAM D information includes such data as taxiway closures, personnel and equipment near or crossing runways, and airport lighting aids that do not affect instrument approach criteria, such as a VASI. What was VASI again? Visual Approach Slope Indicator Lights. Okay, so DNOTAMs. I want you to turn the page real quick. We'll go back to FDC. And I want you guys to look at page 768 and look at all the keywords. These are all different types of DNOTAMs. We have RWI, which is an easy one. That's runway. TWI is taxiway. Apron. AD is aerodrome. Obstruction, navigation, communication. Do you guys see our map? There's a ton of them. These are all DNOTAMs. Now go back to the previous page. Page 767. Top left, number 2. Highlight FDC NOTAMs. Highlight FDC NOTAMs. FDC stands for Flight Data Center because these are issued out of the National Flight Data Center in Washington, D.C. Shh, I'm outside, so. The second sentence says, FDC NOTAMs contain such things as, I want you to highlight amendments to published IAPs and other current aeronautical charts. Come here, Hattie. Come here. Come here. Come here. Hey, come here. Right. This is the loud one. Hattie B, stay here. So, an FDC deals with amendments to published IAPs. What does IAP stand for again? Instrument Approach Procedure and Charts. FDC NOTAMs, guys, are going to be a lot longer. They're just like kind of like paragraphs. Oh, you're dirty. But I want us to practice some now on the FAA website. So, go with me to FAA.gov. Oops. There you go. Okay. Type in Notice to Airmen. Click on the first one, the ATCSCC one. Click Oop, where'd it go? I read and understood it. And then let's put in KBNA, and let's put in KMIA. Let's do Miami and Nashville. Okay. Let's see. I want to start with this one. Go 1, 2, 3, 4 down, and click on this. Okay. Now, this is a DNOTAM, a distant NOTAM. I know because the keyword here is taxiway. These numbers right here, guys, is a coding system, and don't worry about learning that. And this is BNA, taxiway R3 is closed, and here's the date and year. So I want to tell you how to do this. Okay. The first two numbers is the year, so that was 2019. The second two numbers is the month, so that was 09, which is September. And the next two numbers is a day, so this was September 9th, 2019. And the last four numbers is always your time in Zulu. It is in Zulu. And this one, the taxiway Romeo 3 closed September 9th, 1300 Zulu, 2019. And it's closed when? Until permanent. Let's practice another one. Let's do, I like this one. Let's do this one right here, Miami. Okay, this is what kind of NOTAM, D or FDC? D. The keyword here is NAV. NAV is navigation. So for Miami, ILS runway 12, the glide path is, I want you to actually look that up with me. So I want you to go to the back of your book, go to NOTAM again in the index. I actually forgot what page it was on. We're looking for NOTAM contractions, which is on page 770. It's probably not in there, but of course it's not. Well, those are most of the contractions. I won't give you something like that that's a little more difficult to follow for an exam. Well, although you could use your notes, but I find an easier one to do with you, just to start. Here you go. Let's do this one. Sorry. I didn't want to start out so difficult. Okay. This is again a DNOTAM. What's the keyword here? Runway. So for Nashville, runway 13 and 31 is closed. This is the year 2020. 03 is the month, 1A is the day, 18 is the day, and 11:18 is the time. EST is not stand for Eastern Standard, guys. That is estimated. So runway 13 and 31 is closed. And it started on March 18th at 11:18 Zulu, and it's estimated to stay closed until April 28th at 2200 Eastern. I mean, estimated. I just said that. Let me show you an FDC NOTAM now. Let's do Nashville. Boom. Okay, so these are a little longer, and it looks intimidating, but it's really not. So this is an FDC NOTAM. I know that because that's how it starts. Flight Data Center. This is for Nashville, an instrument approach procedure. Nashville International, Nashville, Tennessee. This is an ILS. This is for the ILS or localizer DME runway 2 right approach. ILS stands for what again? Instrument landing system. Localizer. DME is distance measuring equipment. This is Amendment 8 Bravo to this FDC. This is for a straight-in localizer to 2 right. The minimum descent altitude is now 980 feet, and the height above touchdown is 390 for all categories. Remember, we have categories are based on VREF or VSO times 1.3. It says circling categories A and B, the minimum descent altitude is 1160, height above airport is 561. These are obviously changes from what's normally published, guys, and this is all because there are what? Temporary cranes up to 877 feet MSL, 5,902 feet north, runway 2 right. This is all NOTAM construction codes we don't care about, and it says, except when advised by an air traffic control tower that cranes are down. This started February 25th at 1502 Zulu, and it's going until April 1st at, did I mess up? 20, yeah. 1502, that's very precise. Zulu estimated. How do you guys feel about that? Pretty straightforward? Okay. So if I might end up like giving you some NOTAMs to practice, but I'm going to give you, I just want you to practice some basic NOTAMs. There's a lot, guys, when you get out in the real world, we're talking about hundreds that you'll have to go through. And you really have to get good at like kind of picking the ones that's most important. Look at the runways, look at the ILS. Sometimes like that one actually changes the landing minimums on an approach, which then affects whether or not you can or can't go there. So, okay, let's see. So temporary flight restrictions are in NOTAMs. That was that whole point. 91.139, let's go back to there. We also have emergency air traffic rules that would be published in NOTAMs. And 91.141 talks about flight restrictions in the proximity of the presidential and other people such as the vice president, public figures. That would be published in a NOTAM. And guys, when we have temporary flight restrictions, we obviously can't fly through them without permission from the agency, which would be ATC. So when we're talking about like any place that has large amounts of people, like football games, hockey games, Bonnaroo Festival, Democratic, Republican conventions, VIP movement, air shows, Disney World, they all have TFR. So I do want you to kind of play around, go to the FAA website, or even just Google temporary flight restrictions, and you'll see where those are at right now. So I want to switch gears, guys, and go to 91.151 and talk about visual flight rules for fuel requirements. So it's on page 189. Okay. It says fuel requirements for flight in VFR conditions, paragraph A. No person may begin a flight in an airplane under VFR conditions unless, considering wind and forecast weather conditions, there is enough fuel to fly to the first point of intended landing, and assuming normal cruising speed, number one, during the day, to fly after that for at least 30 minutes, or at night to fly after that for at least 45 minutes. Okay, so first of all, why do we take into, okay, two things that we have to have for VFR. One, we have to have enough to get from point A to point B. That's the first thing we plan. After that, during the day, we need an additional 30 minutes. And if we're flying at night, we need an additional 45 minutes. Oh, why do you think they take into account wind and weather? What would a tailwind do to our fuel burn? It would decrease our fuel burn. It helps us. A headwind would increase our fuel burn. Well, how would forecasted weather affect us? Well, we're flying along point A to point B, and smack in the middle, there's a forecasted thunderstorm. We're obviously going to have to circumnavigate that thunderstorm, right? So that's going to require more fuel. How do you feel about that? Does that make sense? So how much fuel do we have to have for VFR during the day? Enough to get to our destination plus 30 minutes. And at night, VFR, we have to have enough to get from point A to point B plus 45 minutes. Okay. 91 I'm just kind of skipping around. 159 talks about VFR cruising altitude or flight levels. So what does it say? Except while holding in a holding pattern of 2 minutes or less, or while turning, each person operating an aircraft under VFR in level cruising flight more than 3,000 feet above the surface. So this doesn't start until 3,000 AGL. It says they shall, what's the word shall mean? They must, it's imperative. They shall maintain the appropriate altitude or flight level prescribed below unless told otherwise by ATC. So paragraph A is when you're below 18,000 feet. If you are flying a westerly heading, which is, did I start backwards in the book? It's okay. Westerly headings, guys, are going to be even plus 500, and easterly is going to be odd plus 500. So you look at A1 and it says from 0 degrees, which would be here, right? The north 360 or 0. From 0 degrees to 179. That is easterly flights, right? Easterly flights. It's going to be odd numbers. So it might be like 3,500, 5,500, 7,500. You have to add the 500 feet for VFR traffic. Because IFR traffic, we will drop the 500. And then for westerly flights, which this time it would be just 1 degree before zero, right? So 359, remember north is 360 or zero. So from 359 all the way through, 180, those are westerly flights. West is even. Plus 500 for VFR. So like 4,500, 6,500, right? Even numbers plus 500. Okay. I would like to say that these videos will get more professional as we go along, but let's be real. I'm doing the best we can with the corona epidemic. I don't have any of this software or fancy stuff and have dogs at the house. So, and honestly, I feel like you guys would expect nothing less from me. So anyway, I also think my laptop's about to die. So let's move inside. Hold on. Let's do this. Because I would hate to have to re-record 20 minutes. Let's see. Stand by. I'm going to turn some lights on. So while I'm getting set up, guys, go to 91.167, please. Is that good? Can you see me? Plug in the laptop. Boom. This girl is on fire. Try not to sing. That wasn't part of your torture. Okay. I feel like it's really blurry, but... Nope. Okay, go to 91.167, guys. All right. We got fuel requirements for flight. Now, I already taught you the fuel requirements for VFR. What was it again? Enough to get from point A to point B. And during the day, how much reserve did you need? 30 minutes. And then at night, how much reserve did you need? 45 minutes. Okay, this is IFR. What's IFR stand for again? Instrument flight rules. Okay. 91.167 alpha. No person may operate a civil aircraft in IFR conditions unless it carries enough fuel, considering weather reports and forecast, because that is different, and weather conditions, and then they list 3 things. The other rules were 2 things. 1, sorry, I just realized that my header looked weird for you guys. I'm not in the right. Yeah, we're right. I'm sorry, I got confused. Okay, 1, complete the flight to the first airport of intended landing. So that's point A to point B, right? 2, except as provided in paragraph B of this section. So we'll have to go to the B part because that is an exception. It says to fly from that airport, which means your destination, to the alternate airport. And then 3, fly after that for 45 minutes at normal cruising speed, or for helicopters, fly after that for 30 minutes at normal cruising speed. Okay, so how much fuel do we need? What was new was the alternate requirement. So we have to have enough to get from point A to point B. And you have to do it in this order. Do you guys see what I mean? Like you have to plan it in this order. First one is point A to point B. Second part is an alternate airport. And then the third part, and it did not matter whether it was day or night, you have to have how much reserve? 45-minute reserve. Now, they said, if you go back to A2, it says except as in paragraph B. So now when you go to B, and B says paragraph A2 of this section does not apply if. Okay, I know this is weird, but go back to A2, and what was it talking about? What category? A2 was talking about alternate airport fuel. So if I was to write the regs and it made more sense, B would say you do not need an alternate if. And this is called the 1, 2, 3 rule, what I'm about to teach you. So go to paragraph B. Number 1 says part 97 of this chapter prescribes an instrument approach procedure to, or a special instrument approach procedure has been issued by the administrator to the operator for the first airport of intended landing. All that means is there has to be an instrument approach. So let's just ignore that one. So go to number 2. Appropriate weather reports or weather forecasts or a combination indicate the following. So let's pause there for a minute, because the fuel part also talked about weather reports and forecasts. Those are different. A report is an actual observation like a METAR or the radar. A forecast is like a TAF. It's a prediction. Remember, why do we take into account wind and weather? Headwind, burn more fuel. Tailwind, burn less. Weather, we have to make sure we don't fly through. We may have to fly higher, lower, go around, whatever. So it does affect our fuel calculations. Okay, so now what we're at is we are reading when we will not need alternate fuel. You guys okay? It says when the weather, and it said reports, forecasts, or any combination, because guys, it's up to us. Like, we might look at several sources and kind of combine it and be like, okay, this is what the weather, is looking like. Diamond, be quiet. Okay, so B2, little I, says for aircraft other than helicopters, for at least 1 hour before and for 1 hour after the estimated time of arrival, the ceiling will be at least 2,000 feet above the airport elevation. Is that AGL or MSL? Above elevation is AGL. And, highlight the word and. Visibility will be at least 3 statute miles. At least does not mean more. At least means just has to meet it. So this is called the 1, 2, 3 rule. The 1 is the hour before and hour after the estimated time of arrival. The 2 is a 2,000 foot ceiling. 2,000 foot ceiling. And we know ceilings are given in AGL anyway, so that's why they did it like that. And then 3, the visibility has to be at least 3. It has to be all 3 of these guys, the 1, 2, 3 rule. In other words, if the ceiling was 2,000 feet, but the visibility was less than 3, then you would not meet the 1, 2, 3 rule, and you would need an alternate. The 1, 2, 3 rule determines if you need a destination alternate. The 1, 2, 3 rule determines if you need a what? A destination alternate. Okay, so I have an example here. I said you plan to arrive in San Jose at 1900 Zulu. So the 1, 2, 3 rule says you got to look an hour before and an hour after your estimated time of arrival. So what's an hour before 1900? 1800. An hour after is 2000 Zulu. When you look at those 2 times, you're looking at 2 things. You're looking at the ceiling and the visibility. What did we say the ceiling has to be? At least 2,000 feet, not more, but what? At least 2,000 feet, and the visibility at least 3. If you can do that, an alternate is not required. It's not required. Here's another example. We dispatched a flight from Nashville to San Francisco, Boeing 753. The ETA is 1120 Zulu. When trying to determine if a destination alternate is required for the flight, you looked at the following forecast for San Francisco because that was your destination. And guys, listen, it doesn't have to be exactly 1 hour before and after because that's not real world. Like, you might be looking at 10:05 Zulu. Do you guys see what I mean? But on this example I gave you, exactly 1 hour before and after. 1 hour before is 10:20. 1 hour after is 12:20. The 1, 2, 3 rule. The 1 is the hour before and after. The 2 was at least a 2,000 foot ceiling and 3 statute miles. Do I have at least 2,000 feet before? Yes. At least 2,000 after? Yes. At least 3 statute miles an hour before? Yes. Is there at least 3 after? No. Is a destination alternate required? Yes. And on the test, I will ask you just like this. If so, what's your reasoning? The answer would be yes, because an hour after your estimated time of arrival to your destination, the ceiling is 2 statute miles, forecasted to be 2, and it needed to be at least 3. How do you feel about that? Obviously, the answer is going to have to be electronic, but I'm just saying make notes right now if something isn't making sense. Cool? Wow, this is like, I wish I could tell what you guys think right now. Am I making sense? Let's see. Okay. How much fuel do we need for IFR? We need enough to get to our destination, our alternate, and 45-minute reserve. We only need an alternate if we do not meet the 1, 2, 3 rule. So now, let's say that we do need an alternate. Now we have to select an alternate. Do you see the difference? 1 determines if we need it. 1 has to select it. So 1, I might determine that I need toilet paper. And then the second step would be to go find toilet paper, which in this situation, it's not possible, just to let y'all know. But do you see the difference? One's determining you need something, and the other is actually going out and getting it. So, though I said here, the 1, 2, 3 rule is used only to determine if an alternate airport is needed. Once you decide an alternate is required, you now have to select one, and it has to be legal and it has to be safe. So, your alternate, I wrote, guys, that's your backup plan. It's your plan B, so to speak. It's if something happens and you fly to your destination, you shoot the approach, you get down to the decision altitude, you don't see what you're supposed to see, you go missed. Maybe you do that another time, then you're like, man, I got to get out of here. I don't want to get into my reserves, right? So now you're going to your backup plan. So we want it to be solid. To ensure it's solid, we have to meet certain weather minimums. It's called alternate weather minimums. Alternate weather minimums. So go to 91,169 Charlie. You didn't even have to turn the page. It's on the right-hand column. Be right back. I need some more light. Hold on. Okay. Paragraph C, go to the little I, and then the capital A and B, and highlight that for me. It says, you know what? 2 of my light bulbs are out. That's why it's darker in here. I'll be getting hopefully better in time, guys. Okay. The I says the alternate airport minima specified in that procedure, or if none are specified, the following standard approach minima. A, that was weird. Let's go back to C. Sorry, that didn't make sense to y'all. Go to C. IFR alternate airport weather minimums. Unless otherwise authorized by the administrator. Who's our administrator? Steve Dixon. No person may include an alternate airport in an IFR flight plan unless appropriate weather reports or forecasts or a combination of them indicate that at the estimated time of arrival at the alternate airport, the ceiling and visibility at that airport will be at or above the following weather minima. At or above. It means it does not have to be more than, it just has to meet these minimums. The translation is every alternate airport has to meet alternate weather minimums. So these minimums, so what I want you to write down here, guys, I want you to write down these are our standard alternate weather minimums. Write down the word standard. And it depends on whether you're shooting a precision approach like an ILS or you're shooting a non-precision like a VOR or localizer. So A says, for precision approaches, the ceiling has to be 600 feet and visibility 2 statute miles. Non-precision, they raise it up 200 feet. They say 800 feet, vis stays the same, 2 statute miles. That's your standard. Alternate weather minimums. The 1, 2, 3 rule determines if you need it. And then if you do, now you go about, you try to find one. And that weather has to at least be 602 for precision, 802 for non-precision. If you can't find an airport, guys, that meets those minimums, then you can't find an alternate, which means you can't take off because it was required. You'd have to delay the flight until the weather got better and you didn't need an alternate, or until you could actually find a legal alternate. Depends on the situation. I want you to really think about that and tell me if that makes sense, because if not, maybe I'll make some worksheets or something for us. Okay, 91.171, real quick, just highlight VOR. What's VOR stand for? Very high frequency omnidirectional range. They have an ops check. It has to be done every 30 calendar days. That's just a memory item. I feel like I told you this one a minute ago. Maybe not. 91.173, highlight A and B. It says no person may operate an aircraft in controlled airspace under IFR unless that person has filed an IFR flight plan. And then after you file that, you have to actually receive a clearance. So if you don't receive the clearance, you're not authorized to make the flight. So you do have to give ATC a heads up. You submit a flight plan. They approve it or deny it. Once you approve it, you receive an appropriate clearance. Okay, this I just kind of wanted to throw out there for my pilots, which are most of you guys, to highlight and look at. 91.175, 3C. I have it listed up here on the PowerPoint. So you remember how we've talked about, always on the instrument approach procedures, like, hey, we go down to the decision altitude, the decision height, and that's the altitude the pilot makes a decision. Do they see the required visual reference? And if they don't, execute a missed approach. And if they do, continue the descent. Well, the required visual reference, guys, are any of these things listed on the PowerPoint. I just want you to guys see approach lighting system, the threshold or the markings or their lights, the reels, the VASI, the touchdown zone or touchdown zone markings or lights, runway or runway markings or lights. So they just give a list. These are all considered, these could be our required visual references. Okay, 91175. Guys, I want you to know, we're in the same, we haven't changed the reg yet. We were just there, sorry. So just go to paragraph F, Foxtrot. And this is talking about how to determine if you're legal to take off. So there are actual takeoff minimums. These are called standard takeoff minimums. Guys, every single reg I teach you in the real world, under part 121 or 135, there is an option to have an exemption from the FAA to have lower numbers in this. But I'm just teaching you standard for now. So paragraph F says this paragraph applies to persons operating an aircraft under part 121, 125, 129, or 135. Go to 2, and it says if takeoff weather minimums are not prescribed under part 97 of this chapter, so it's not on the instrument approach, there's a page that talks about it in your jet chart. It says the following weather minimum apply to takeoffs under IFR. And it's based on how many engines we have. So it says for aircraft other than helicopters having 2 engines or less, which I don't know, it's really weird wording because what's less than 2, 1. So anyway, let's say if you have 1 to 2 engines, it says you have to have at least 1 statute mile. And if you have 3 or 4 engines or 3 or more, half statute mile. Well, what is equivalent? So let's go back to the 1 to 2 engine aircraft. We have to have 1 statute mile. If RVR is reporting at the airport, equivalent is 5,000 RVR. That's the equivalent. 3 or more engines, half statute mile. If RVR is being reported, that's 2,400. Those were those memory RVRs. Pretty sure I told you to memorize those before spring break. Did you guys memorize them for test 1? Let's see. 1 statute mile is 5,000. 3/4 statute miles is 4,000. Half statute mile is 2,400. And 1/4 statute mile is 1,600. Those are kind of the common ones. But anyway, going back to this, guys, these are our standard takeoff minimums. If we do not have these, we cannot take off. So 2 things. Takeoff is based solely on visibility. It had nothing to do with the ceiling. You guys hear me? Takeoff minimums are based solely on visibility, and the number depends on how many engines you have. Okay, IFR cruising altitudes and flight levels, guys, they're the same as what I read you a minute ago, except for IFR, we dropped the 500. We dropped the 500. So go to 91.179, page 199. So west is even and east is odd, just straight numbers. So west would be like 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 feet. Flight level 180, etc. East is odd numbers, 7,000, 9,000, so on. 91.185, guys, I actually want you on your own, because you'll need these for check rides for sure, to read through all of this and to highlight it. This is what we do if we have lost comms. If we have lost comms. A talks about, unless otherwise authorized by ATC, each pilot who has two-way radio communications failure when operating under IFR, under what? IFR shall comply with the rules. This is important, guys, because you're in instrument flight rules. You're below visual flight rules. Flying in clouds, low visibility. The basic rule is stick to whatever you said you were going to do in your flight plan, or if ATC gave you a clearance, or if ATC gave you an expected clearance, stick to it. That's the gist of it. Basically, don't just do like the wild, wild west now that they can't communicate with you. Stick to what you're going to do. And if there's something that you have an option to be more conservative, so let's say there's 3 altitudes, you're going to pick the one that's what? Highest. You're going to fly the most conservative when you lose comms. Okay, 91.203. Civil aircraft certificates required. Paragraph A, says no person may operate a civil aircraft unless it has within it the following. Number one, highlight an appropriate and current airworthiness certificate. Highlight airworthiness certificate. Airworthiness, worthy of the air, safe to fly. We've talked about that a lot, right? How do we ensure this? How do we ensure that it, who determines if the aircraft is airworthy? Pilot in command, right? You do the walk around, the checklist. Who maintains airworthiness? Owner and operator. Side note. Okay, so one certificate we have to have is an airworthiness certificate. Turn the next page, guys. Number 2 says an effective U.S. registration certificate. You got to have 2 certificates, airworthiness and U.S. Follow-up question. What has to be displayed at the cabin or cockpit entrance visible to passengers or crew? Paragraph B, go to Bravo. I'm on page 202. You guys there? No person may operate a civil aircraft unless the airworthiness certificate required by paragraph A of this section or a special flight authorization issued under 91.715 is displayed at the cabin or cockpit entrance so that it is legible to passengers or crew. Okay, you know how you walk into a restaurant and you got the food report that has to be visible? We got to be able to see it like right here, and hopefully it says like 97, 98, 99, or 100. Same thing, airworthiness certificate. When you walk into the aircraft, right, and you enter the aircraft, you got your cockpit to your left and passengers go to the right. Right there in the front, there should be the airworthiness certificate. If the airworthiness certificate is suspended or revoked, the aircraft is grounded and it cannot fly until it receives its authorization again. Okay, 91.209. Aircraft position lights, they have to be on. Oh, oops, sorry guys. I covered up what I was wanting you to see there, I think. But I have here, have to be on during the period from sunset to sunrise, or in Alaska during the period of prominent unlighted object cannot be seen from a distance of 3 stock shoot miles, or the sun is more than 6 degrees below the horizon. We're not in Alaska right now. A1 says operate an aircraft unless it is lighted positions lights, unless it has lighted position lights. 2, park or move an aircraft in or in dangerous proximity to night flight operations area of an airport unless the aircraft is blah, 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 blah. Can read that later. That was painfully boring. Sorry. You guys read that one later. It's straightforward. Okay. 91.211. Let's talk about supplemental oxygen. You guys are doing a great job staying awake, I assume. And you're not on your phone and you're highlighting as we go along, right, guys? Okay. 91.211, supplemental oxygen A. It says no person may operate a civil aircraft of U.S. registry, number 1, at cabin pressure altitudes above 12.5, up to and including 14,000 feet MSL, mean sea level, unless the required minimum flight crew is provided with and uses supplemental. Shh, Hattie B. Uses supplemental oxygen for that part of the flight at those altitudes that is of more than 30 minutes duration. Okay, so guys, 91.211A, 1, 2, and 3 is for unpressurized flights. So it's like our DA-40, Cessna 172s, etc. It's not for pressurized flights. So we're not talking about Airbus, Boeing, CRJs yet. So what that said is if you're flying above 12,500 up to 14,000 feet, if you are in those altitudes, it says you not only does the flight crew have to have supplemental oxygen, the flight crew, but they have to, it says provided and use supplemental oxygen for that part of the flight if they're there for more than 30 minutes. So if it wasn't more than 30 minutes, you wouldn't have to put it on. Does that make sense? 12,000, above 12,500, up to 14,000 feet, and you're there for more than 30 minutes, you have to put on and use your supplemental oxygen, the flight crew. Number 2, at cabin pressure altitudes above 14,000 feet, you can't fly above 14,000 feet MSL unless the required minimum flight crew, remember flight crew guys are our pilots, not our flight attendants, not our passengers. they're provided with and uses supplemental oxygen during the entire time. So if you're above 14,000 feet for 3 minutes, you are using your supplemental oxygen. And this is all to ensure we do not experience what condition? What occurs if we have a loss of pressurization? Or if we have a loss of pressurization results in loss of oxygen to our brain, which results in hypoxia, which is very dangerous, right? If you experience hypoxia, guys, then you need to get to lower altitude, right, where it's more breathable. So they're saying when you're flying at those higher altitudes, since your aircraft is not pressurized, you need to put on your oxygen and use it to ensure that there isn't any hypoxic symptoms. Experiencing hypoxia is, I think I have a video for you guys to watch on this, but it'll explain a little bit more. But there's lots of different symptoms people can experience. Euphoria, which is like an overwhelming sense of like joy, and even in like bad situations, you're like, oh yeah, we're crashing, but life is great. I feel good. Usually you have like blue or purple fingernails, fingertips because of loss of oxygen. Impossible to concentrate, can't function basic, calculations, even like 2 plus 2 would be impossible. There's lots of really funny YouTube videos where the military have the chambers where they practice learn their hypoxic symptoms, so that they're in that situation, they recognize it and they can descend down quickly to a breathable altitude. And then number 3 talks about if you're above 15,000 feet. The difference on this one, guys, is not only does the flight crew have to use it, but now even passengers would have to be provided with supplemental oxygen. They have to be provided with. Okay, now 91.211 Bravo, pressurized cabin aircraft. It says number 1, no person may operate a civil aircraft of U.S. registry with the pressurized cabin. So now we're talking about Airbus, Boeing. This is where I have here what is cabin pressure. As an airplane increases altitude, we know what happens to pressure. Pressure decreases. It's not that there is less oxygen, guys, up there. It's that there's less oxygen per volume, right? It's spread out more. So there's not enough molecules for us to breathe at those high altitudes. So to combat that, we pressurize the cabin, where we make sure the outside ambient air and the inside is not that different. We pressurize it. And it's usually around 8. I mean, it depends on the aircraft, but anywhere from like 8, 10, 12,000 feet is kind of what our bodies feel like. We pressurize the cabin to be at that altitude. Because we can't breathe at 37,000 feet or, whatever the altitudes are up there. So, let me see. What's the next one? Okay, we'll get to this slide in a minute. Let's read the regs. It says, so now I'm talking about pressurized flight. B1, no person may operate a civil aircraft with pressurized cabin. Number 1, I mean, if at flight altitudes above flight level 250, unless at least a 10-minute supply of supplemental oxygen, in addition to any oxygen required to satisfy paragraph A, is available for each occupant of the aircraft for use in the event that a descent is necessitated by loss of cabin pressurization. So, above 250, they have to have an additional 10-minute supply. You're thinking, why only 10 minutes? Well, here's why. 1, this is how pilots, pressurization works automatically, guys, from what's called the pneumatic system. Pneumatics means air. Pneumatic uses bleed air from the engines. It's usually 2 stages from the compression section. I don't know, the one I teach is 737, so the CFM engine, the CFM 56 engine, the turbofans, they actually take bleed air from the 5th and 9th stage and they direct it to various parts of the aircraft for numerous reasons. One of them is pressurization. It's called pressurization and air conditioning kits. There's 2 of them. So guys, as long as the pneumatic system's working properly, your packs are working good, airplane pressurizes automatically. And you just basically monitor it, and we don't ever like the red, right? So we're just like making sure everything's good. If something happens, these indications would let you know, like, well, something is off. And as long as the system works properly, oxygen mask will fall down for the passengers. And then, you would put on your oxygen mask. And obviously, we would want to descend, right? We want to get to a breathable altitude. So, you think, well, why only 10 minutes extra supply? Well, here's why. This was from NASA, I believe is where I got this from. This gives our altitudes and our time of useful consciousness. This is how long we have if we lose pressurization. So let's say there's a hole in the fuselage and it starts to equalize with the outside and we are losing pressurization. We need to check our quick reference handbook, which I don't think I've taught you this yet, but it's a manual where anything bad happens in flight, we go to and it tells exactly what to do. It's going to tell us to descend down. It's going to tell us to do it pretty quick. And it's because we're trying to get to breathable altitudes so that we don't experience hypoxia. Once we become hypoxic and we do not correct for it, which is by getting down lower and getting oxygen, we eventually just fall asleep and then you would die. So that's why they're talking about time of useful consciousness. So most airlines are flying around this range here, the 30 to 35, flight level 350. Time of useful consciousness, check it out. Check out how low it gets the higher you get. So 10 minutes is more than enough time in an emergency situation to get down to the altitude you need. That's why they have it like that. Guys, promise me you'll listen to this super cool NPR by Professor Embry-Riddle. I know, it's still cool. We're all a team. And it really explains everything I'm covering in detail. And it talks about a Cypriot airline, which is where I'm from, half Cypriot, and how it crashed and what happened. And I want you guys to listen to that story and then report. We'll talk about it somehow. But pause on that. Let's go back to the regs. So we know if we're flying above 250 pressurized, we have to have an extra 10 minutes, right? Oxygen. Above flight level 350, you can't fly above that. Do you see where I'm at? I'm in the Roman numeral 2. Unless one pilot at the controls of the airplane is wearing and using an oxygen mask like this, that is secured and sealed and that either supplies oxygen at all times or automatically whenever the cabin pressure altitude exceeds 14,000 feet. Cabin pressure altitude is not the altitude we're flying at. It's the altitude our cabin is pressurized for. Remember I said most of our airlines are flying at 30,000, 35,000 feet, but we don't feel like that. We feel like we're at 8,000 or 10,000 or 12,000. 14,000 is the magic number, guys. Once our airplane exceeds 14,000 in the pressurized cabin altitude, the automatic systems will deploy if they're working properly. It says, except that one pilot need not wear and use an oxygen mask while at or below flight level 410 if there are two pilots at the controls and each pilot has a quick donning type of oxygen mask that can be placed on their face with one hand from the ready position within 5 seconds. So guys, that's why when they're flying, they don't have to wear these quick don masks the whole time. When they're flying those altitudes, because there's two pilots and they both have these, quick don means they just grab it with one hand, put it on their face, goes over their eyes, their nose, their mouth. It's a suction. It's an active system, different from the passive oxygen for the passengers in the back. As soon as you put it on your face, as long as the regulator is turned on, you just have to suck really hard and push it really hard, and you'll get oxygen immediately so that you're not hypoxic. Passengers have a different one. They have these, right? And they tell you in the briefing, like, don't put it on yourself first and then help someone else. There's a really funny scene in Four Christmases, if you guys have seen it, with Vince Vaughn and Reese Witherspoon, where they get in an argument because she's like, I bet you wouldn't even put my mask on first. And he's like, no, I wouldn't. And the FAA wouldn't want me to, because basically if you help someone else and then you end up passing out, what good does that do? But they tell you in the briefing to put it over your nose and then and wait that the bag will inflate and that it's working. It's just not inflated yet. It's actually not true. It's not inflated yet because there's not oxygen there, but it's just coming. It's coming through the system. But I'm sure that would freak people out. So promise me you'll click this NPR. It's a quick listen, like under 10 minutes, and it's I think it's a pretty powerful story. The Cypriot airliner experienced loss of pressurization. All the masks fell down. Pilots put their masks on. It was a faulty oxygen system, which is extremely rare. I think it's only happened twice. And they basically did not receive the oxygen at all. They continued to fly on autopilot at altitude until the plane ran out of gas and crashed. And of course, everyone on board the aircraft died. Pretty horrible. Why am I on that one? What's next? Okay. I want to do something that's not on there. I want you to highlight 91.213, and I want you to write out what an MEL is. Inoperative instruments and equipment, paragraph A. Except as provided in paragraph D of this section, no person may take off an aircraft with inoperative instruments or equipment unless you have an approved minimum equipment list, and then more stuff. I want to summarize that. All I want you to know, it's not on the PowerPoint at all. If something is inoperative, what's the word inoperative mean? Broke. If something is inoperative prior to takeoff, you consult an MEL, a minimum equipment list. I need to make a note because I'm going to put one on D2L for y'all to see. So, and you consult it. So let's say our wing anti-ice valve is inoperative. Okay. It's all on computers now. So we open up, we go to the system, we find that system. And if it is listed, if it is on the MEL, it may be inoperative, and your aircraft will still maintain airworthiness. Now, it might have some provisions. It might say, sure, you can fly without it, but you can't fly in known or forecast icing. Or, yes, you can fly without it, but make sure you placard this. Placard is just putting a sticker over the system. Pilots always placard stuff. Maintenance is a different. If there's a maintenance procedure, you have to actually get a licensed technician. But if it says placard, flight crews can do that usually. It might restrict your flight level. It might say, yes, you can fly, but these other 3 things have to work. If something is inoperative, guys, before flight, and it is not on the MEL, you cannot fly until it's fixed. Minimum equipment list. Write this out. I want you to write it out right now because I'm going to ask you this on the test. Minimum equipment list is a list of items that may be inoperative, which means not working, prior to departure and still maintain airworthiness. Now, guys, if you're flying and something breaks, you don't consult the MEL. It doesn't matter whether or not you needed it, you lost it, right? Shush. If you're flying in flight and something is inoperative or a light illuminates, come here, baby, then write down QRH. Then you consult the Quick Reference Handbook, QRH. Quick Reference Handbook, guys, it's of course electronic now because it's 2020, but basically, like, let's say you have a low hydraulic pressure, low A system illuminates. Then you go to hydraulic system A. It'll have a checklist, tells you exactly what to do. Guys, always follow your checklist for the QRH. Do not troubleshoot. The aircraft manufacturer and the FAA has made sure to develop those checklists, and they are legit. So, something is inoperative prior to departure. What do you check? MEL. Something goes wrong in flight, abnormal, emergency, you consult the QRH. I'm going to ask you all those 2 and one more. QRH stands for Quick Reference Handbook. The last one, guys, I want you to write down is CDL, Configuration Deviation List. Configuration Deviation List. It is a list of items that may be missing prior to takeoff and still it's airworthy. It's the exact same definition of MEL, but MEL, it can be inoperative, and CDL, it can be completely missing. Like, handles, little things, obviously, not like the wing, the engine. So and that make a note that if something has a CDL item, it usually is associated with a drag penalty. A drag penalty. And also maybe they'll have you increase your fuel burn or something. I don't know where I'm going. Oh, there you go. Okay. Maybe highlight. What did I just see? I wanted you to look at. I didn't have you highlight. Oh, 91.207 talks about ELTs. I do want you to at least know what those are. Emergency locator transmitters. Maybe glance through that. Okay, go to the reason I feel like I've taught you TCAS already, guys, but 91.221 talks about traffic alert and collision avoidance system. Sorry, guys. Shh. Hey, stop. And then terrain awareness and warning system is 91.223. And that's talking about, do you guys see here how I have GPWS? And it's usually E, electronic ground proximity warning system. And then ADSB, I want you to highlight 91.225. Make sure you know a little bit about that. So I feel like I've taught you this on the screen, but just as a reminder, there are different types of TCAS. I've taught you TCAS 2 so far. TCAS 2 gives you two things. Remember, it gives you a traffic advisory. So it's a screen. It lets you know when aircraft's nearby. It gives you a yellow dot, and it tells you like maybe minus 600. That lets you know 600 feet below you. Kind of like going through a yellow light. And then once that light turns red, that's a visual warning, but there's also what we call aural warnings. Aural, A-U-R-A-L maybe. Yeah. Where the system starts yelling at you. Pull up, descend, steep turn, whatever. So TCAS 2. I'm going to ask you, I think I already did, but I want you to know how it operates and what it is. So it operates by scanning the vicinity, and it integrates transponders. So my transponder has to be on, your transponder has to be on, and they communicate with each other. And although some can be false, all pilots are told to regard this as genuine, as well as ground proximity warning system. And that's a system that we were saying the Kobe Bryant helicopter flight must not have had because they in fog ran into that mountain. A lot of helicopters don't have that, but our aircraft do, our jets especially. And that lets you know when you're close to terrain. So TCAS lets you know when you're close to traffic. GPWS, ground proximity warning system, is on the same display, but lets you know when you're close to the ground. And then you have stall warnings and stick shakers and things like that are all, to be regarded as legit. Here's an example of a resolution advisory. So see, it's yellow. It says a traffic advisory. It's yellow. They're minus 900. Told you that already. And then, red's not our favorite color. Now she's yelling at you, telling you what to do. This is a resolution advisory, RA. Oh, okay, cool. We went over this already, 91.213. I want to make sure you wrote down the definition of MEL, CDL, and QRH. Remember, quick reference handbook. It's the document to consult when anything occurs in flight. And we've talked about this as well, 91.403. We're almost done with this part, guys. Hang in there, I'm almost done. 91.403 says the owner or operator is primarily responsible for maintaining the aircraft in an airworthy condition. Owner operator is responsible for maintaining airworthiness, but who's responsible for determining airworthiness? You, before you get on your plane, right? Pilot in command. Breeze through these, and last ones are quickies. 91.411, I want you to know the altimeter has to be tested every 24 calendar months. And 91.413, the transponder, the same, every 24 calendar months. And I want you to find these answers. Go through the book and find them for me. Do we have to have an ELT? What type of airplane? How many seats require terrain? I think I had shown you some of those a second ago. But that's the end of part 91, guys. We wrapped up part 91. I'm going to post a discussion forum. So if there's any questions on this specific one, I'll label it part 91 discussions. And guys, feel free to help each other out on those discussions because, maybe you have the answer, and if it's incorrect, I'll of course chime in, but otherwise, cool job. And I'll be communicating with you more and give you some more guidance as I figure out what I'm doing. I miss you guys already. Take care.